Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about keeping those highways all across Tennessee safe. I have Kendall Poole with the Governor's Highway Safety Office here with us tonight, and also Colonel Tracy Trott with the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We've had a great conversation so far. We had Glenda on the line, and Glenda, I'm sorry we couldn't get to you fast enough, but our producer passed along her question. It's a good one that probably a lot of people have. What if your seatbelt just doesn't fit right? Maybe you're too short, you're too tall, you're too big, you're too small, whatever it is. Can you put that belt behind you and still have the lap belt across you and be considered abiding by the law? What do you do?
Well, that's probably the comfort question is probably the thing that comes up more than anything when people say it's just not comfortable for whatever reason. And the Colonel will tell you that we're certainly not going to advise anyone to put that shoulder harness behind you and still utilize the lap belt. Certainly that's better than anything, and technically it would not be a violation of the law. But again, I certainly would take my chances at having both my shoulder harness and my lap belt on in a crash based on the studies that I've seen over the years.
And you said, both of you all point out, there are some ways to maybe help that seatbelt fit a little better.
You know, on the newer cars especially, there's an adjustment where you can raise or lower the seatbelt angle that comes across your shoulder harness. There are extensions that can be fitted to the seatbelt law to fit around larger people to make it more comfortable. The thing that I worry about if people start putting these shoulder harnesses behind them, they have to think about when they have a crash and they hit a fixed object, a tree or whatever like that. You know, if they're going 45 miles an hour and they hit that tree is not going to move. Your car is going to come to an immediate stop. Your face and your upper torso is going to hit that steering wheel going 45 miles an hour if you don't have that shoulder harness on you properly positioned. So that's what we try to prevent. That's what we want people to understand, that that's the kind of violence that's involved in these collisions.
You know, that really puts it in perspective when you say that and give us that visual. And I know you guys see a lot out there. I'm glad I don't. Let's talk more about this texting while driving and the distracted driving. It is such a huge issue, as you pointed out. We don't think
it's an epidemic.
You know, that's a good way to put it. It's an epidemic. We don't think we have reliable statistics on it because people aren't going to fess up that they were really looking at their cell phone. Tennessee, there is a law. You cannot text and drive, but that is so hard to prove.
It is. Distracted driving, you know, when I was learning how to drive, distracted driving was reading the sports page or fiddling with the radio knob.
Putting on your mascara in the mirror.
Right, or eating or anything. That was what constituted distracted driving. And now all of the technology that's made our life so much easier is also another cause for distraction. So we've been working closely with a lot of the cell phone manufacturers on distracted driving campaigns and doing that. We still haven't got enough money from the federal government and the Governor's Highway Safety Office or any of the state highway safety offices to conduct a full-out assault in an educational campaign. I think it's something that everybody pretty much knows.
Yes. But
again, it's just training yourself to be able to put that phone down. And he can quote statistics all day long about the dangers of distracted driving, and we've already talked about that. But you know, we hear another deadly story virtually every day, and so we just want to make sure that whatever your distraction is, that you put the phone down. I mean, it can wait. We participated in that. We talked about the DMS signs. Commissioner Schroer's got the ho-ho, hold your calls message up there too. Again, when you're texting and you're driving on the interstate and you look down, the average time that it takes to read or send a text, you will drive the length of a football field.
Which is crazy to think about.
So you think about that, driving the length of a football field and taking your eyes off the road.
If I remember my math right, and I haven't studied this stuff in a long time, but I think at 55 miles an hour you're traveling about 66 feet per second. And so if you look down at your iPhone for 2 seconds, you've gone 110 feet. If you're down there for 5 seconds, you know you're 300 feet length of a football field. So much is happening in that time period. And then if you do look up and you see something in front of you that you have to react to, about the fastest reaction time is about 1.5 seconds. So you've traveled, you know, another 75 feet before you can do anything about it. And that's what causes the problems on these interstate and high-speed highways, that people are looking at their phones for 3 or 4 or 5 seconds at a time. You add in the reaction time, they've gone a long way before they can really affect the direction or the speed of their car. and we see crashes every day. Some of them very minor in nature, but some of them very, very serious that causes either maiming, injuries, or fatalities. And we just, it's really the next big issue in traffic safety is distracted driving that we're all going to be working on across the country. Impaired driving has always been had a strong place in our hearts that we need to work on and solve, and by no means have we forgot about that in any respect, and we work on it every day. Seatbelt enforcement is continuing to be an important thing for us, but distracted driving is moving up the ladder very fast.
Yeah, we used to always talk, Carrie, about booze, belt, and speed.
Yep.
All right, so when you're talking about highway safety, people said booze, belt, and speed. Those are the things we're going to look at. Well, distracted driving is now a part of that conversation. It's booze, belt, speed, and distraction. That's it.
Yeah, and you said even though, as I mentioned, it's very hard to prove someone was actually texting because they could be looking at an email or looking up a website or whatever, looking at Facebook. There's a broad law that you can still cite them
There is a due care statute in the state of Tennessee that takes in more distractions, anything that affects your ability to drive safely and be distracted from your primary purpose can come under that statute. And we use that statute in some courts. We first talk to the judge before we start using it to make sure he's comfortable in using the distracted driving part of what we're trying to accomplish under that statute. And if he's comfortable with it, then we'll use that broader statute to, it just makes it easier for us to make a case in court that will stick.
Yeah, so don't think you're going to get away with it. That's the moral of the story here. Let's talk about the impaired driving. A lot of holiday parties coming up. People may be a little more careless than perhaps what they should be. What do you guys look for out there, and what are you seeing out there on the roadways this time of year?
Well, one thing I would say that I think this time of year that everybody is more safety conscious around the holidays, and even going toward New Year's where there's a lot of drinking involved in celebrations. My experience over 37 years of doing this job is that we have less of a problem with drinking and driving around New Year's than many of the holidays during the year. July 4th, Memorial Day, Labor Day, those are all very deadly holiday periods.
And actually, number 2 is Halloween.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Our Thanksgiving holiday weekend, I think we had 5 fatalities for the 5-day period.
Which is good.
Which is really a record for us. I think it's the lowest we've ever had since we've been recording it. At one time we would have 17 or 18 or 19 fatalities over that weekend. So those type of holiday weekends are there's such a consciousness about drinking and driving and having a designated driver. We don't tend to see the problems during Christmas and New Year's that we do during some of the warm weather holidays.
So the message has gotten out. That's the good news, but obviously
but the bad news is all the other days throughout the year that people continue to take it for granted. And I think the message is if you have anything to drink at all, just don't get behind the wheel. Just make the decision before you have a drink that you have a designated driver, that you have a sober driver. Those are the things that we talk about constantly, the things that still ring true that we talked about 20 and 30 years ago. The good news is through enforcement and education and everything that we've done with the Booze It and Lose It campaign, we've actually been able to reduce significantly our percentage in alcohol-related fatalities. In fact, we're much lower than the national average, and I think that's due in large part to our commitment to the Booze It and Lose It campaign.
We've really upped our enforcement and DUI enforcement since 2010. We've increased it 140% within Highway Patrol, and that has lowered our impaired fatality rate from about 28% to about 20%. So it's really, that strategy has worked well for us. The thing that we're dealing with nowadays that we didn't have to 15 or 20 years ago is the prescription drug abuse and the other illegal narcotics that seem to invade many more people nowadays. And those things are taking place at 9 o'clock in the morning and not 12 midnight on Friday.
Right.
So we have to be more in tune to actually be looking for the impaired drivers at all times of the day, 24 hours a day, not just on Friday night and Saturday night, where that's where we used to have our concentrated efforts.
Carl brings up a great point. Impaired driving is impaired driving. It's not just alcohol anymore. So Tennessee obviously is a heavily prescribed state,
Yes.
as we've noticed.
Yes.
And so when you have more people with prescriptions, that means more people behind the wheel. So it might be illegal narcotics, which is what people like to think about when they think about drugs. But now it's prescription drugs,
Yeah.
whether it's over the counter. You know, when that bottle says "Do not operate heavy machinery," well,
That's your
guess what?
car.
Your car is heavy machinery, and I think that's what people tend to forget.
Yeah, it's not the bulldozer they're worried about. It's your
That's
own
right.
car. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, more Open Line. Stay with us.